Emergency, but we are very lucky that Mr. Walker Chandler showed up to come talk to us about jury nullification, because it's very important to have a lawyer talk about jury nullification for certain reasons. So thank you.
I'm getting kind of old, but I'm going to stand on this chair. One of the things I just said to Tamara was that you need to speak to the person in the back of the room. Can you hear me back there okay? And then I don't have to worry about y'all. Okay? Right? Alright, I made a few little notes here, and they, in Shakespeare, when that guy's giving advice to his son, among other things, he says, brevity is the soul of wit. I.e., don't just go on and on and on. So I promise I'm not going to go on and on and on. Now another thing is we have kind of a small crowd here. So when you have a small crowd, I like to talk about how to give public speaking sometimes. And this is going to be a little short thing about that. First, speak up so the guy in the back can hear you. Second is kind of keep it brief so people wish you would say more, not less. Okay, so that's important. Another thing is have notes so when you sit down you don't say, gosh, I forgot to say that. Okay, so that's where I'm going to start off from. And I made a few little notes here, not just about jury nullification. Since it's a small group, what I'm going to do is stop in a little while, and then if you have any questions about any of the topics I touch on or anything else other than, why does your pants zip down? Oh, yeah. Anyway, all right, the first one is that I think right now, if you're not already doing it, right now you should be contacting your state representatives and your state senators, okay? You need, and your county commissioners, and they need to hear that you believe in adult use, okay? But I talked to an old guy. He was the oldest guy in the General Assembly once. 20 years ago, I said, y'all ought to consider decriminalizing marijuana. And he says, you're the first person in Spalding County who's ever asked me that. Everybody else wants more punishments and all this crap. But you're the first person. And I thought, here he is in a county of 20 or 30,000 people in that county smoke dope. And not one of them has called me. Now, what's the problem? Are they afraid he's going to call the police and sick the police on him? There's nothing about which we need to be ashamed or afraid anymore. Because ultimately, we need to think about this one word. It's called inevitable. We have reached the tipping point. We know that adult use is going to be legal, even in Georgia, within the next 3 to 5 years. Because the majority of people want it. Whether cannabis is good or bad is irrelevant. The General Assembly doesn't care if it's good or bad. All they care about is getting what? Revenue. Re-elected. They don't even care about revenue. They'll make the state go broke. They don't care about that. They want to get re-elected. And we've already, y'all, NORML has already done statistics that said that a majority of voters in Georgia want legal adult use now, not 10 years from now. They want it now. So when I go to court these days, I think it's a great argument. I go in there and I tell the cop, the prosecutor, and the judge, look, we all know it's going to be legal in 2 or 3 years. So what are y'all doing now? All y'all are doing is beating up people to get their money. That's all it's about. It's not about correcting people's bad behavior. It's about just stealing their money. So you should be ashamed. And I think it's a fairly effective approach. Okay? Because they know it's true. Even if they don't like marijuana, they know it's going to be legal soon. Alright? Now, so that's first. Contact your representatives. Anybody need to take notes? That's pretty easy to remember. The next one is the word inevitable. Alright, if it's inevitable, what's going on in the meantime? What's going on in the meantime? I said the best analogy I'm using in courts these days is I say this is like after the breakout at Normandy. The German troops are still inflicting casualties. They know the war is lost, and yet they keep on inflicting casualties. Now that's immoral. They should have just surrendered. They should have quit. They should have quit hurting people. And so should you police officers. So should you judges. So should you prosecutors. And they know that, and they're cutting really good deals these days, okay? So inevitable. The next one is to use the term adult use. I think that's the best way to talk about it, rather than decriminalization or legalization. I like to call it re-legalization, because it wasn't always illegal, you know. All right, but I say adult use. Now the next one is, I think it's good to use the word cannabis rather than marijuana. Marijuana was a Mexican word, and oh, those evil Mexicans used cannabis. And cannabis goes way back, you know, it was a well-recognized medicine. And for that matter, as Roberto can tell you, we recently went to the Patients Out of Time conference in Baltimore, where leading experts from all over the world were there talking about all the research that's going on with cannabis and the cannabinoid receptors in the body and all the good things about medical marijuana that is important to remember, medical cannabis, okay? And so when these people in the General Assembly are giving you bullshit, then you say, you know, you need to say, listen, it might not be the best medicine, but what right do you have to say we can't try it, we can't use it, that my dying grandfather can't have cannabis if he wants it? You know, there's a lot of immorality that goes on in the General Assembly in order for people to get re-elected. And ma'am, if you get up there, you remember that we'll remember you were here. All right? Well, all right, so cannabis. And we talk about medical breakthroughs. I think most of you probably are aware of James Bell and his efforts to have what's called Georgia Care. And he's doing a lot of very good lobbying. And if you can send him $10 and all that, I know Peachtree NORML can use money too. But put some money in, put a little bit of money toward James, because he has a good way of going over there and not offending people. Now that's important. I think it's important for us not to offend people as much as some of them are as offensive as hell. You know, some of these people out on the road that are stopping people and inflicting casualties for no good reason. All right? When I'm doing all this stuff, I like to say, support your cannabis-friendly attorneys. My son and I practice law together. He does entertainment law. But I have these people who will call me up and everybody get a business card from me tonight. You might never use me, but on the other hand, a family member might have a traffic accident or something like that. Sometimes these people will call me from a distant part of the state where I can't effectively handle their business. And I tell them, I say, listen, you're going to need a lawyer for this case. If it's that, I say, you're going to need a lawyer, but don't hire one of them that thinks cannabis should be illegal. You follow me? There's no, why should we finance the enemy? Right? And a lot of these cannabis, well, a lot of these criminal defense lawyers, not a lot, some of them, they look at a person coming in there not as a victim of the government, but as a paycheck. Right? And they're charged. I heard of one on a small cannabis case down in Columbus. Jose Guzman, a friend of mine that went up to that conference up there, he was saying some local attorney wanted $15,000 to represent somebody that Jose or I would have probably charged $3,000 or $4,000. $15,000. That's just theft. That's not criminal defense. And I'll bet you that son of a bitch says marijuana should be illegal because it's harmful. Right? So that's important. Support the lawyers who support you. And then we come to jury nullification. The problem with jury nullification, now Georgia has it in its constitution that it says the jury will be the deciders of the law and the facts. It says right in the Constitution. But Georgia has some case law that says, well, that's not really the way it's supposed to be interpreted and all that. Unfortunately, I was the one that brought the case up there, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, but it says it right in the Constitution, and if you go to a jury trial, you have to put in what's called a request for charge. You have to request it in writing that the judge tell the jury that they have that right. But the judges will often just, they have the right to do this, they have the right to do that, and you're just going on and on. But at least then in closing argument, your attorney can hit that point. Says the judge is going to tell you that as the jury you have the right to do this. This is an important right because the founding fathers knew that in a democracy you were going to have these groups like our General Assembly who cowardly and stupidly come up with ridiculous laws that only a jury can fix. And you're not, if you say that my client is innocent, you're not going to find him guilty. Well, the other people on the jury, they may be thinking, oh, he's guilty, but they can't question your saying that. All you got to do is just say, I'm not going to convict you. Now, and then the lawyer can argue other points. The inevitability of it. What are we doing here today? Why are they bothering this person? You see, now the judge might get mad at him if the judge is some kind of a whatever. But I haven't had judges. Now, I haven't had much success with jury nullification because most people who get charged with a cannabis offense are facing heavy penalties, and so they feel like they've got to go ahead and plead and get some kind of conditional discharge or some kind of a probation or something like that. They can't risk 10 years in prison, right? Because it's like on a sale charge, isn't that what it is now? 1 to 10 years, something like that on a sale? Well, you know, jury might let them go, but the jury might be a bunch of damned idiots and convict them too. So what we have is an essentially evil General Assembly. Remember that, please. It's essentially evil. And what I tell people, and I argue this in courts on what's called a motion to quash the indictment, is that the cannabis laws were started in 1935 by a bunch of liquor-swilling white men who didn't know what they were doing and didn't care what they were doing, right? And then, who has it been maintained by since then? It's been by people who knew or should have known better. And people like Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich and Obama and Hillary Clinton. Hillary's sitting there saying, we need more studies. What a bitch. Now some of y'all might be voting for her, but that is almost as big a lie as I did not inhale. And that class of people, I thought when I was in college that cannabis would be legal within 3 to 10 years. But no, because the kind of people like Gingrich and Clinton, who are my generation, came up and they're sucking up for those votes and they're not leading, they're just lying. That's all they're doing. Because they want to get elected. And they have all these old people who grew up in a public school system that told them that if the government says something is bad, then it's bad. And you better just believe that. Alright, anyway, that's enough of this, but jury nullification is important. I think that if you're going to be handing out stuff like this, don't be handing it out at your trial, okay? Because that certainly is number one. It looks like jury tampering, doesn't it?
There actually was some charges that were filed in various jurisdictions about people unrelated to the trial, but just being outside. Denver's case was the biggest one, where the gentleman was outside and he was charged with jury tampering, and he had to go and get an injunction in order to be allowed to go back out there. And it went to federal court before it was removed. Now, you're talking about a number of things there. You're talking about First Amendment rights, you're talking about both speech and petitioner government. But the jury tampering thing is what it was Denver County threw at them.
Well, and nowadays, of course, Denver, no problem. But it's something that one needs to think about, okay? But on the other hand, I think it's important. I was a member of FEJA for many years, and one thing that's great about FEJA, even if you don't get out and do a thing, is they have a lot of great literature, and they've got a lot of great quotes about freedom and about how the founding fathers knew that a jury was ultimately the only protection, because obviously you have you have people like Obama. I want to talk about Obama. There he is a cannabis dealer when he's a high school student, and he admits in his book that doing cocaine and stuff. But in office, did he really do anything? Maybe toward the last he's done a few little things. But that really pisses me off. And it pisses me off about Bill Clinton. Anybody here believe he didn't inhale? Anybody in here believe he didn't have?
I don't think he ever exhaled.
Anybody here believe he didn't have sex with that woman? All right. So
which woman?
Any questions? All right, I'll be glad to answer questions or just talk. I can talk over
lawyers, so
yes.
I'm not very politic at all, but I wrote a letter, and it may have even been through NORML to Johnny Isaacson.
Oh, yep.
Senator. And I got a reply, and he made it.
Listen up, Troy.
He made it very apparent in no uncertain terms that he wasn't anywhere near for descheduling cannabis off of Schedule 1 or doing anything to promote any kind of legalization.
Yep.
And the first thing that crossed my mind, this is what I mean when I'm not very politic, when I got his response about that.
Let's listen up. And first, your response.
And my question to you is, what would be the matter now? NORML, there's a lot more folks in NORML than are in this room tonight. And it wouldn't cost very much if everybody contributed to a full-page ad in the AJC, okay, that says, at the top of the page, Johnny Isaacson refuses to take cannabis away from kids.
Well, may I suggest that you sent one letter, and so let's say he gets 10 letters like that a year. What if he got 10,000 letters like that? Okay? And what if, rather than taking an ad saying what a son of a bitch he is, why don't you just support Alan Buckley? Isn't that who's running against him? The Libertarian candidate?
Martin or whatever.
I've run as a Libertarian. I ran for Lieutenant Governor twice, 90 and 94, and I ran for Attorney General in 98 as a Libertarian. And you know what? I didn't get a whole hell of a lot of votes because the people are just Republican or Democrat, and so they vote for the shit that they've got. I mean, that's just a fact. But at any rate, what I'm saying is I think there are more effective ways. Now, I think letters to the editor are good, because and if all of you would write letters to the editor, if you wrote one a week to various newspapers. I saw where your sheriff's office did a marijuana arrest last week. When are they going to quit wasting money, and when are they going to quit penalizing for people for something that will be legal next year? You follow me? I mean, they're just a simple letter. There's an art to writing a letter. Is you need to write it and then edit it and write it and edit it and keep it fairly short and to the point. Yes, ma'am. Stand up and speak.
I can't hear you. We should consider everybody should use Clarkson City as an example.
Clarkston.
Clarkson.
Yes.
Use them as an example that they said it right there in the paper. The sheriff was in the article that we're not in the room with people's lives, and that's you can quote it from them.
Yep.
Use it as it's their peers,
And it says what you can just anything you want to come up with is fine, but think about it from the standpoint of people who are like if you want them to vote against Isaacson. Just say, I wrote to Representative Isaacson, and he's not the least bit interested. He said he's not the least bit interested in doing anything to change the laws against cannabis. That's the first sentence. Next sentence, the majority of the Georgia voters want adult use. Number 3 is, why does he take his position other than he is mistakenly thinking he's helping somebody somewhere? And that's enough. You see what I mean? That's a short letter, and maybe they'll print it. And if you don't want to go to the trouble of writing a letter if it's not printed, but guess what? You can write 30 letters in a month, can't you? Using the same, changing it a little bit, sending it 30 papers. All right? But please do that. Contact representatives. You know, that one guy from Spalding County, Walker, you're the only guy that ever said anything. What if 5,000 people had said something? he might have rethought, maybe they said, you know, maybe these people, they're good people. Maybe they know something I don't know. Maybe I have been fooled all of my life. You follow me? Because he grew up in the 30s. Right? He was a World War II vet. All right? Any other questions or ideas? I enjoy being here, by the way.